Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the next edition of AmiSights. I'm Ami Kasar, your host, along with my co-host, Lynn Ozer, a.k.a. SBA Queen. And today, we have my friend Mark Wooster on, who is a.k.a. Breathing Kick.
AKA Nurse Mark, and a lot of other things.
So, Mark, why don't we start and just tell us a little about your journey and your story?
My gosh.
If you want to get to the beginning of the story, does it start before you went to college or after?
You know what, Lynn? I didn't go to college till I was 56 years old.
Well, good for you.
I
what
had an
put you
alternative
on
path.
your entrepreneurial journey?
Oh my gosh. You know, I was working for a gentleman in the IT space, telecommunications space, at a young age. He hired me. I was maybe 22 years old, and I really enjoyed the business. And after a few years, we had a falling out. I went to work for a couple other companies, and I realized, I think this happens a lot in the Americas for sure. I realized that I could do a better job than any of the people that I had worked for. And I said, you know what? I'm going to roll the dice and give it a shot. And I just started and bootstrapped and made every mistake that you could possibly make as an entrepreneur.
Well, what was your first entrepreneurial endeavor?
Listen, it was 30 years, this entrepreneurial adventure, and it's still running today. That company still operates. It's still, making great money and still successful. And it was in the IT space. The name of the company is Unitel. And that was it. I had a beautiful run with that company. And then in 2017, I sold my shares and my majority shares, and got into the healthcare world. Like, I have a bachelor's in nursing, a master's in medical cannabis science, and I operate in the psychedelic medicine space, completely different than running an IT company. I'll tell you that much.
That's for sure. So that's when you decided to go to college?
Yeah, 2012. I decided that I had attended this curriculum. It's a group called Landmark, and I don't know if you're familiar with Landmark. So I did the Landmark. They're a human potential activator, right? They're this group that's been around since the early 70s. And I did their curriculum. And from that, in 2010, I realized I wanted to do something in healthcare, something that was more person to person, more related to people and healing. So I had been dating a nurse. I loved the stories of her job. I loved her too. She's great. And I decided, you know what? Nursing is it. I ran the numbers, honestly, Lynn. I ran the numbers. I couldn't be a surgeon. I would love to have been a surgeon. I would love cutting people open. I love surgery. I love the OR, but the numbers didn't flush out, right? I'd never pay off the debt. It just didn't work. So I said, okay, nursing. Yeah. And I got my associates in 2014, my bachelor's in 2018. And then I went on into the cannabis world as a medicine and received my master's in 2021. Yeah.
That's
been a wild journey.
Impressive.
Been crazy.
So, Mark, how do you compare this life to your last life? How do you compare your current?
I guess that was the training ground for what I'm doing now. I mean, it really, I don't have any regrets. There were amazing times. There were times that were, my biggest learning times were the times that I had adversity, right? One of the greatest ones, I'll tell you, I can read a P&L and a balance sheet like anybody, right? I'm really good detailed. And the reason that is in 1998, I founded the company in 87, 98, we're rolling. It's a great economic time and we're really rolling. And I have no idea how to run a business. And so we have 40 people on staff, and anytime there's a problem, we just hire a body and throw it at it, right? We're not managing anything. And I had a line of credit with the Bank of America, God bless. And they had covenants that said they needed to see our financials every year. Well, they didn't come around for 3 or 4 years. So I'm out $300,000 on this line of credit. They come in, the economy's starting to dip in 98. They say, hey, you know what? We'd like to see the financials. A week later, they say, oh boy, we want our money back. And, I had no way to pay them back because I was out $300,000 because I needed to float the business. And they put me in this wonderful thing called forbearance, which basically is you pay them blood money every month for a person to come in and beat you with a stick until they get every penny of their money back. And it's great. I learned in that moment how to run a business from a financial standpoint. Like I had to give them financials on a monthly basis to the penny. And I really got an education on how to read a financial statement, how to run an organization based on cash flow, how you really should. That was my MBA. It really was. It was probably better than any MBA. And within a year, we paid off that $300,000 and established two banking relationships.
Your business had to have been healthy for you to be able to pay $300,000 back in a year's period of time.
Right. It was a viable business. We just didn't run it correctly. And I'll tell you,
let's take it.
Pretty interesting.
Let's dig into that a little bit. So, how long were you running that business before you hit that point?
That was the 11th year.
So, what is the learning? What is the learning in there for our entrepreneurial community that it took you 11 years?
You know what? I think the lesson is that you can run a business for a pretty long while until you start to scale and actually need to have some sort of business acumen. Like you can get into a business that by default, you can make money. Like if you do the right things, you'll make money. It's just as you scale and you start to expand, that's when you need to have a little bit more business acumen and really understand, what you're doing. And I got an education. I'll tell you one other thing that came from that experience. I had just started therapy because I was angry at my father. We didn't have a good relationship in childhood. So I had just started therapy, and my therapist at the time, I came in and I told him the story, and he said, man, your head is about to explode because I'm under all this pressure. And he said to me, I just went on a yoga retreat at this place called Kripalu, which is in Massachusetts in the Berkshires.
Yeah.
And I never had done yoga. I mean, I'm a Marine, right? 17 years old. We don't do yoga. He said, go there for a week. Like, just go for a week. Now, everybody, of course, thought I was nuts. They're like, it's like Nero with the fiddle as Rome's burning, right? You're going to go, you're going to spend money you don't have to do this thing that you've never done before. I went in that week. It was magic. And I came back and I became a yoga instructor and I got into meditation. And I'll tell you, that was critical in my mindset, being able to handle that adversity, that pressure. It went away. Like, because of those practices, I was able to be super focused and clear and able to pay that debt off in a year. So it was a critical moment. And of course, I mean, it's paid dividends since. I mean, I've had a meditative practice since then, and it's been amazing. Yeah.
Can I go back to the fact that you were running this business for 11 years? You had that same line of credit the entire time?
Well, yeah. No, we had that. We'd had the line of credit probably since 94.
And that was the only financing you ever had?
It's the only finance we bootstrapped, yeah.
So you were paying interest on the line and nobody was bothering you until that point.
No.
So your business was apparently throwing off cash that you were not really aware of because you were able to pay the bank back in a year.
We were overstaffed.
Where was the money going?
We were overstaffed. Remember I said I threw a body at anything, right? So staff are always the most expensive asset that you have, right? So
well, you get rid of bodies, that money drops right to the bottom line, right?
Right. Exactly. All of that went to the bottom line. Well, all of it went to the bank.
Yes, of course. Okay. All right. Now I understand. I understand. Okay.
Right. So then, at Y2K was very big for the IT industry, right? Because everybody had to do something, they thought. So, 2000 was the best year we ever had because we had paid off the bank and all that money went to the bottom line. So we had a great year.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mark, I got two questions for you.
Yeah.
First question is, what can we do as they're kind of bipolar questions.
So one at a time, Ami.
Let's go. I love the extremes. Let's go from the bottom to the
What can we
top.
do as an entrepreneurial community so the first time you really dig in and learn your financials isn't when you have your pants down?
Yeah. Well,
So,
yeah,
I mean, we see it here all the time, right?
of course.
And it super frustrates me because all these people in our community in EO, they invest heavily in EOS and all these things. They can't read their freaking financials.
I know.
And they don't know if they're right, and they don't understand their cash flow, and this, that, and the other. And they're investing all this planning and how to run better operating systems and this and that and the other. I'm like, get cash flow right, and then worry about that stuff.
Right. You think they have a base in order to overlay the EOS. Yeah, I love EOS, by the way. I almost became an implementer when I sold my business. I loved it so much, and I used it in my business. And, it's great. It's a great tool, but you're right. You got to have the base firm and solid. Like if you're going to build off of a base where you have no idea really what's going on financially with your business, you can't make accurate decisions on strategy. Like, what are you going to do? Like, if you don't understand really fully where all of your revenue comes from, all of it, the different places, and where all of the expenses are to the penny, you just really can't make accurate decisions, right? You guys live with that. Then you're money people. It's what it's about.
So all these people invest so much time, effort, and energy into EOS. And don't get me wrong.
No, I love it.
I'm not
powerful.
against EOS.
Yeah.
But I feel like EOS or scaling up or any one of these different methodologies is kind of malpractice if the business doesn't have its fundamental understanding of its fundamental financials.
I couldn't agree more. On the face of it, we looked great in 1998 from a top line revenue standpoint. And, if we had applied scaling up or EOS or any of these marvelous, ways of operating the business, I don't think that it wouldn't have had the positive results that we would have been looking for because we were still cash poor. We still were being financed by the bank because we didn't have an understanding of really expenses to revenue. We didn't understand ratios. We didn't understand any of the fine points of running a for-profit business. And after all, that's what it is. It's a for-profit business, and understanding how to be profitable is the first step, I believe. And then you can add on all these beautiful, powerful systems to allow you to operate better from that base of understanding where your finances are. Yeah.
It's like, how can you pick your rocks?
How do you know?
If you don't know if you don't know your finances,
you're
guessing.
No, you're guessing. And you go from what looks good. It sounds good. These rocks sound good. Like if we achieve these, I think we'll have success. Yeah. It's the base, right? It's the base from which we have to begin that whole process.
So in your business now, do you know your financials?
I do, intimately, yes.
Okay. Well, that's good to know.
I do, yeah.
Tell us about your business now. What is it, Mark?
Guys, it's hard to say that it's a business. It's a church. I run an organization, and it's not for everyone. It's called the New Mysteries, and I am, as I said, in the psychedelic.
I'm sorry,
medicine.
the New Mysteries?
The New Mysteries, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And so we, a bunch of us, use plant medicine, sacred medicine. And we do believe that it is divinely inspired. And we help people to exit, these preconceived vessels that have all this programming and be able to really access life in the moment, fully, completely, and make choices. So like we teach them to read their financial statements of being in this thing, right? It's a base from which to operate. And then anything's possible, whatever it is in your life that you deem important.
What does that look like, Mark? Is it retreats? Is it programming?
It's
Is
retreats, it's programs, it's cohorts of people who come in and go through a program, a process of identifying sort of the base programming that we get from 0 to 7, starts in the womb and goes all the way up to age 7. We're in this hypnotic state of just taking in information. You know, if your mother says, don't put your hand on the hot stove, you just don't put your hand on the hot stove. You don't analyze, well, why did she say that? Perhaps I should try it and then see what, validate. No, we just take it in and we assimilate it into our subconscious, and it goes in there and we don't ever think about it again. And so there are so many base, I call them programs that are in our subconscious that we operate from without any knowledge of them. And they do impact us day to day in all our relationships and everything that we do. All our beliefs are built from them. So being able to step outside of those, to see them first, decide whether our response to them is positive or negative or giving us the life that we want. And then we get a choice. We get to work with them, and we can reset them into something that's more positive in our lives and gives us the one that we want, the one that we choose, choosing not from those base programs, but from pure choice. Yeah. It's like, Abraham Maslow, the psychologist. So he's very famous. He founded transpersonal psychology, right? So he has that hierarchy of needs that, as human beings, we kind of fulfill on these needs as we rise up. At the top of that sort of hierarchy is self-actualization. And I would say that we're all self-actualized in EO, like we've achieved things in our lives and we've taken care of all of the base needs. There's another level beyond that called transcendence. And that's the area I work in, going from self-actualization to transcendence, because you're at that point where you can actually attend to it or see that it's something that you want to explore. And once you reach that, it's basically, you're operating in the world of what's my role? How am I giving back to the universe, to my fellow human beings? Because it's a reciprocal relationship at that point with everything in your reality. Yeah. I mean, it's just amazing. I'm so blessed to be able to offer this and to be a part of this, really.
So Mark, here's a question for you. I have a lot of friends, including you, who are deep into this stuff. Yeah. And I haven't even scratched the surface. I'm kind of scared of it, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know that I'm probably in the majority, which is
absolutely, 100%. Yeah. By design, by the way.
Yeah. But how do you, for people who believe in, call it Eastern medicine, which I think is a lot of the stuff.
It's sort of the perspective. Yeah.
Sort of the perspective. Mm-hmm. To keep it simple, there's not simple, but at least in my simpleton mind, there's Western medicine and Eastern medicine. And
right. I'm well-versed in the Western medical tradition, right? I understand pharmacology and psychopharmacology and pharmaceuticals, and I think there are some wonderful pharmaceutical medicines, just that I don't believe that it's the be-all, end-all, especially in the psychiatric space or in the space of consciousness.
But how do you have someone pick, let's say I'm not going to say any names. I have a friend who's deep into your stuff, right? And whenever there's a medical issue, that's where he goes first.
Yeah.
And in my head, I don't quite get that. Now, I'm probably more judgmental. I lean more to the Western medicine, but
understandably so. I mean, that's how you've been programmed to believe, right? That's what we've been immersed in. It's what I was somewhat programmed to believe. I mean, I grew up with a mother who was raised by 2 Christian scientists, right? So Christian Science belief is God's going to heal everything. You don't take any medicines. You don't, unless your arm's falling off and you're bleeding profusely, you never go see the doctor. So I had that, as well as I had a father who, if he gets a sniffle, he's going to the doctor. He's going to take whatever they give him. So it was like this combination of the two. So I have a respect for both, but I recognize that we are programmed completely to only look at the science behind something and to only honor what we can prove. And that's not all there is.
I totally get it. How do you, and maybe that's not a why answer, but when you're confronting an issue, depression, making, that's just hypothetical.
Yeah.
How do you, I take my Prestige once a day every morning. I wouldn't have survived multi-funding without it, okay?
Brother, let me tell you, that is the best segue ever. So, behind the scenes, super successful in the entrepreneurial space, have this great life, married, kids, all of these other endeavors, all of that. Behind the scenes, treatment-resistant depression right here, right? So that means no medications work. I was part of studies at Harvard University that compared mindfulness and an intervention with medication. And, I've done all of these things because nothing worked for me. I had to keep going. And of course, I'm going to go as far as I can. Suicidal 3 times, always at the end of a relationship. So many great therapists, so many great psychiatrists. I'm talking 20 years of beating it up. And again, I understand the psychopharmacology. I'm working that, in nursing. When I work in nursing, I'm on the acute care psychiatric unit. So I'm giving out these medications. I've been on these medications. It wasn't until I got to psychedelic medicine that I was able to uncover the root cause for my treatment-resistant depression. I have been medication-free and depression-free for the last 4 years, and that is a godsend. Like it is the life that I live today, the joy and the happiness that I have in every moment it's mystical. So what happens in the psychedelic experience, and ketamine, a legal psychedelic, was the first opening door for me. What happens in that is that you are given the gift of being able to see what that root cause of that depression was. And it may be something that you inherited from generation before. Like we have that in our DNA. We get their experiences. It goes deep, but you're able to see that. Western medicine isn't able to do that. Talk therapy won't do it. Medications won't do it. You'll take the Prestige. You'll feel good because it'll boost your serotonin. It'll help with your dopamine. You'll feel better. It's about symptom relief. But if you really want to get to the root cause and the cure, you are going to go down the path of these experiences, these peak experiences. By the way, you mentioned breathwork early on. That is, the breathwork that I do is a psychedelic modality, is something that is very healing. All of the medicines that I've worked with personally allowed me to see what the root causes were, the stories, the beliefs that were untrue, work with them. It was the breath work that actually physically removed them from me, because we hold all of those memories in every cell of our body. It's not just in our brain, all of our cells. It's where you get some pains, aches, you're holding it. Breath work was able to release that. So for me, breath work is just a sacred, beautiful modality, technology that we can use to really have a better life.
You or any of your patients, once you reach the epiphany of what's at the root of this, can you verbalize it, or it's just something that's lifted from you?
No,
or you can actually verbalize what has been the root cause of your depression?
Yeah, I can verbalize it. I can tell you right now, it was because of interactions with my parents who did not have a great marriage, and I'm the oldest, so I saw that the longest. It was interactions with my parents that I formulated the belief that I was unlovable. So if my father doesn't love me, how can I love me? He created me. So at the root, I'm unlovable. And that rolls out into every interaction. That's why I was suicidal 3 times after the end of a relationship, because it was a validation, right? I had to receive validation from my partners, which is a heavy burden for them. I had to receive validation that I was lovable. And when it went bad, it was a validation that I was unlovable. And so that's where that suicidality and that depression, that deep depression came from. As soon as I recognized that was not a true statement, I mean, the experiences that I had would say that it was true. But let me tell you, my father's alive today. I talk to my father every day. My father tells me he loves me every single day. My father loves me more than any person on the planet. And he always has. He just couldn't verbalize it because of the programming he got from his father, who got it from his father. And that is, you just don't connect to people. You don't tell them you love them. This pain in that, right? That was the learning. And it goes all the way back, by the way, to my great-grandfather on my father's side, who, before he married my great-grandmother and had 6 children, one of them being my grandfather, had another family, had a 17-year-old wife who had a baby in April, and she died in May. He had this great loss of a family that he thought he was going to be a part of. And that's where he shut down. And that's where the whole thing began, the generational handoff, right? So at the end of the day, that root cause was, I'm unlovable. We never got there with the therapist. We talked about my relationship with my father forever. We talked about the relationship with my mother. Talk. We never got to that root cause that I was able to experience and see and then release.
How did you figure that out?
What? There's zero depression, Ami.
Can you talk about what in this new world got you to figure that stuff out? Like, people like me, we don't get that. Like, what? How did you?
Okay, so that's part. So it's the mysteries,
yeah.
Right? There's a part of that, and this drives people in the Western tradition crazy. There's a mystery there. There's a part there that is going to be inexplicable. You won't be able to explain it. One of the common things about any of these experiences, whether it's breath work or plant medicine or any of these experiences, there's a common theme that at the end of the day, you really can't use words to explain it. You can talk around it, but there's nothing like it. Well, I can explain it to you, but until you actually have the experience, you don't know. It's like that. It's an experiential thing. I can say that it gave me access to understanding what was going on for my parents, what was going on for my grandparents, what my experience was in the moment, was allowed me to be back there as a 4 or 5-year-old child and to understand what was going on. It gives me that illumination of what's at the root. Yeah. And it's different for everybody. And it's not like you have one experience and it's done. People say that all the time. They're like, well, why do you continue to do it? It's peeling the onion. You get one layer and it goes. There's another layer. Like, new things come up and you're aware of it. Like when I go and I sit in an ayahuasca ceremony and that is a sacred medicine and it's powerful and I love it. It's been transformational in my life. When I go and sit now, I know months before what we're going to be working with. Like, I receive the information ahead of time and say, well, you know what, on this particular upcoming journey, Mark, we're going to be working on your maternal side of the family in her father's lineage. Like, it's like that. You don't get that in traditional Western medicine therapy. You just don't. It's not built for that. And I had magnificent therapists that helped move the needle just a little bit. God bless. They had their hearts and souls invested in me being well. I'm telling you, there is an excitement in the community and especially in the community, the psychologists, right? Because they're not as wed to the idea that it has to be a pharmaceutical intervention. The psychiatrists are excited, but they're still very much programmed that, you know what, if somebody's displaying these particular behaviors, I better give them Depakote, or I better give them olanzapine, or I better give them, Lexapro or something like that along those lines. Because that's what the education is, the training and the belief is. In the psychological community, they're like, well, this is a new tool. Let's try this, right? There's so many different tools. This is just another one. Powerful, though. Very powerful.
Say somebody is curious. They go,
yeah,
hey, works. Breathwork. Curiosity.
Breathwork, baby. You tried it.
I tried it. It's pretty
Yeah,
awesome, but
listen,
I haven't done it again.
people
But I
people
should.
say yes to breath work.
Wait
Yeah,
a second.
yeah,
So, Ami, you said you tried it.
Well, no,
What?
I tried I did one of Mark's breathwork classes. It was
Okay,
pretty
so
cool.
when you do it, because, I've tried to go to a meditation class.
it's I know.
I can't seem to do it. I cannot rest my
You are
mind.
in the majority.
I can't do it. I assume that if I went more often and I tried harder, but you said in one class you went to a breath class. Did you honestly get in touch with something you didn't already know? Ami, this is a question for you.
That is a good
My
question.
answer is I'm not sure.
Right. Can't put words to it, right?
And I did it once.
Yeah, no, I'm saying,
I'll give you an example of the power of the breath work. I did a 19-city EO tour in India this past year in 2024. I was there 2 months. One of the events afterward, a woman came up to me, early 40s, one of the entrepreneurs' spouse, and came up after the breath work was done. And she shook my hand, and then she started to cry. And she said, "Thank you so much for this gift." She said, "My dad died 2 years ago." Now, in the Indian culture, parents and grandparents are revered, right? It's like everybody lives together. You're a tight unit. She said, "My dad died 2 years ago, and my mom died a month ago." And she said, "I've been so sad and holding on to them so tightly. I miss them so much." She said, "They came to me in the breath work and they said, 'Daughter, listen, we're fine. You have to live your life. You can let us go.'" And she said, "I let them go and they floated off, smiles on their faces." And she said, "I feel so at peace and so happy that I have had the opportunity to have them as my parents." That's what happens in a breathwork session, just an hour-long session. And it happens time and time again. I always have somebody come up to me afterwards and say, "Hey, this happened," Another guy had his grandfather come and visit and say very specifically, "This is what you need to do for my daughter," which is the guy's mother, right? He'd never met his grandfather. But in a breathwork session, grandfather came and said, "Here's what you got to do." These are the things. Once you open up, once you get the conscious mind out of the way, anything's possible.
Are there some people that just can't get the conscious mind out of their way?
Well, listen, Lynn, it's like that, right? Because we have this beautiful defense mechanism called the ego, and it builds this beautiful boundary, this walled-in world that we live in, based on what it can predict. It looks back in all of our experiences, all of them, in an instant, and makes a decision: is this safe? What we're about to do? When you are in that moment of going into a breath work or a sacred medicine experience, your ego is going to freak out because it has no referential data to pin it on. And it says, "No, we're not going to do this. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep you right here." And so many times it takes multiple sessions for that ego to start to just loosen up a little bit. And then finally it reaches a point where it's like, "All right, I give up. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to hang out. Go ahead. All bets are off. I don't know what's going to happen." And then you have this beautiful experience. And in my experience in working with people is that, the logical people, the very strongly wed to this reality people, it does take multiple sessions, whatever you're working with, to get that broken open. But once it's broken open, it's out of the way. Like you may experience anxiety again when you contemplate sitting again in a session, but it gets out of the way very quickly. Yeah. And it's by design, right? It keeps us alive, right? It keeps us in the known world that we know to be safe. And it says, "Hey, this is safe. Lynn, do this every single day."
Yeah. I mean, that makes more sense to me than being able to reach this place in one session. I think I'm one of those people that, I never really thought of myself as being so egotistical as being the blocking point.
Ego gets a bad rap.
But I just, I've done breath classes and this and that, and I'm never in one session. And listening to what you say about, hearing your mother and your grandmother, I think that would be fun. I'd love to talk to my parents again. That would really make me happy. But I can't figure out how to do it,
There's no figuring out. That's the thing. We get in that conscious mind and we're like, okay, I got to make this happen. How am I going to make this happen? And the making it happen is letting go of making it happen. Like just saying, I'm just in breathwork, for instance, we breathe in a particular way for an hour, sometimes 3 hours, depending on the modality. But we breathe in this circular manner. It's pretty vigorous. You do that 15, 20 minutes, you get to a spot where you will enter this space where your conscious mind is offline and you're in the subconscious. You're outside the conscious.
Get scared that they'll never come back to reality. Like that's what
you always do.
Oh my God, I'll be stuck back here.
Yeah. No, there's been moments in some of these journeys where I said, oh, that's it, Mark. You've done it now. This is it. You're going to be like this forever. No, you always come back. And that's, I think, part of that ego wall saying to you, oh, you better not do it. You'll never come back. You'll never be the same. The thing is, you'll never be the same in a beautiful way. Like you'll be able to get past, I guess the way that I put it is, our conscious mind is like a single track, right? But our brain is able to handle millions of data points in an instant. Subconscious is always looking at everything and creating this reality of a safe structure where it's like, okay, these are the things you pay attention to because these will keep you safe. When we get into these experiences, it's opening that viewpoint that we have of reality, and it widens it so that you're taking in more of these data points and this stuff that's unseen, really not experienced, but it's there. We're just not aware of it. Like for me, being in the space that I'm in, having done this for a number of years and gone so deep into the journey, like things in my life are synchronistic. Like I see them coming. I see the connections of this introduction and this person and this experience all woven into this beautiful mosaic that is my life. I mean, I told you, I have the best life ever. Like I just can't imagine that it could be any better than it is right now. Seriously. And here I am with you guys, which is such a gift to have this conversation with you.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So, Mark, let's say there are listeners of this podcast and they go, man, this stuff is fascinating. I want to dip my pinky into it or my toe into it. And they may or may not be a part of you. They might live in the middle of Wyoming. I'm making it up. Where does someone start?
I think, just joining the community. Listen, the New Mysteries is a community, right? So you join the community. We have a regular newsletter that goes out that just has information on it, right? It's just dipping the toe. And, you may start with breathwork. It's a beautiful, beautiful entry point into sort of having these types of experiences. And that may be it. Breathwork can be it for somebody, and it's beautiful and just as powerful as any other modality. And so, a lot of what we do is around breathwork because it is so powerful.
So could someone like Ami's talking about in the middle of Wyoming get in touch with you to do breathwork via Zoom or something?
Yeah.
How do they do that?
They can go on the New Mysteries website, thenewmysteries.org. And they can click on, join the newsletter. They'll drop into our CRM. They'll be part of the community. You opt out anytime you want. And it really is just about staying connected in the community. There's a chat where you can ask questions. And it really is, it's an exploration. It's a conversation, really. And you just never know where it leads. My experience is you start to be exposed to this. You start to feel a calling to want to know more about it. And that's when synchronistically, these things will appear in your life. Like if you're listening right now to this particular podcast, trust me, there's a reason you're listening to this particular podcast. Honor that. There's something that's calling you, and it resides in the mystery.
So let's say, Mark, you do a few breath works, you go, wow, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And you want to go deeper. What do you do then?
That's when you decide if you want to attend a retreat. That's when you decide if you want to sit in this space. And there's so many opportunities to do that. In May, in the beginning of May, I'm going to be going to Costa Rica again to sit with a group called One Heart, the number oneheart.com, word heart. And it's a group that runs ayahuasca retreats, been doing it for 5 years, specifically for the entrepreneurial creative community. And so a lot of EO members go. I have a group of EO members that are kind of coming together, and we're going to go on this journey. And, I always tell people, they ask me, should I go? And I'm like, well, do you feel called to do it? Do you feel a draw, a pull, a curiosity? If that's a yes, then yeah, explore that. Drop into this space. I can tell you that my journey with ayahuasca began at One Heart several years ago. And I've been back several times as an elevation leader, sort of like a forum moderator for the groups. There's 40 people who attend these retreats. They run them every couple of months. And it's a beautiful 8-week container where you have 2 weeks prep online, and then you have 5 weeks post integration online. And the result is the results are incredible. Incredible.
But what is ayahuasca for people who don't know?
Ayahuasca is a sacred medicine that comes from the Amazon jungle. And the indigenous tribes there have used it for thousands of years. It's a combination of a vine, a very thick, woody vine, and some leaves from specific bushes, maybe 6 different bushes. The leaves contain DMT, which is dimethyltryptamine, and it's called the God molecule. It's probably the most powerful psychedelic we know of. Those leaves and that vine get put into a kettle. They have to beat that vine because it's pretty tough. They put it in a kettle and they brew it, and out comes this liquid, and it's ayahuasca. And they consider it a sacred feminine spirit. They call it grandmother. And so if you were to eat those leaves that had the DMT, you would not have any experience other than eating leaves because your body would metabolize them. But by adding the vine, which has chemicals, harmine and harmaline, it shuts off that metabolism and you have the full-blown DMT experience. My question is, how did these indigenous tribes thousands of years ago figure out that this one vine in these 6 bushes go together into a pot and create access to the divine? Millions and millions of species in the Amazon. It's part of the mystery, right? Anyway, that liquid, that beautiful medicine gives you a profound experience of being what you are, which is just part and parcel of the universe. You are it. You're it. You're it. Like you guys are just me having an experience in those particular beautiful vessels. How's it going over there, by the way? I'm having a hell of a ride here for all of us.
I am interested but skeptical.
Yeah. And that is probably the majority of people, and absolutely part of my journey, that skepticism of, well, what's this all about? Is it really? Have the experience, and nothing's ever the same. It's a new ball game. I mean, it's a new ball game. My first ayahuasca journey with One Heart, there was a girl there, very successful entrepreneur, mid-40s. And we have integration circles, every day after we have our ayahuasca journey. It's at night. Second day after we'd had our second journey, everybody had shared something, right? In this group setting. It's very intimate, very beautiful. She hadn't shared, and we all were like, hey, you should share what's happening for you. And she took a couple of breaths, and then she started to cry, just weep. And finally she got the words out. She said, this is the first time I've ever felt loved in my entire life. And then she gave her backstory, and it was a pretty horrible backstory and upbringing of neglect and abuse. And she, the first time, 40 some odd years, successful entrepreneur, multiple businesses, multiple homes, successful on the outside. The first time she felt love was there in that container. And let me tell you what her life is like now. She is loved, and she is love, and she is having an amazing, beautiful life post journey. Those are the kinds of things that happen, right? I mean, I could coach somebody on implementing EOS. I could coach somebody on how to read financial statements. But no. I want to coach you on how to step outside all of that and then step back in and decide what game you want to play. It's all a game anyway. It's a video game. What do you want to play? Yeah.
Mark, it's been amazing and fascinating. Thank you.
It has been fascinating.
So much wisdom.
That's for sure.
Where do people find you, Mark?
Well, listen, the newmysteries.org. You can find me on LinkedIn, Mark Worcester, Instagram, the official Nurse Mark. I am all over the place. So, reach out. I've got all of my contact info's published, probably LinkedIn. It's got all of my info on it. So Mark Worcester, Worster.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great to meet you, Mark.
Thank you so much, Mark.
You too, Lynn. Ami, as usual, an honor and a blessing to spend time with you, my friend. And yeah, let's go have the best day ever.
Okay.
I love it, buddy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.